am ecstatic to be alive, and I pray to God you are as well. My name is Sandra E. Jackson, and I am your host for 1 hour. Run and tell a friend to tell a friend that we are on the air. We are live tonight. If you're watching via YouTube, do me a favor and hit that bell, share, like, and comment because we are an interactive show. I have an amazing author here tonight, and I would love for you to delve in this conversation with us. She is the author of Beneath the Surface. Oh my goodness, do you ever need this book? Do you mind if I invite her in? Her name is Miss Annie Lynn. Annie, welcome
Yeah,
to the show.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Oh my gosh, I am so amazed at this book that you have crafted. It has so many webs, so many hidden secrets, so much learning is involved. And so, what I would like for you to do right now is go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. Just tell them who you are.
Who I am. I am Annie Lynn. I obviously am an author, but first and foremost, I am a wife of almost 27 years,
Wow.
and I am a mother of three wonderful children. Um, they are my pride and joy, and that is in the book, obviously. Um, and I have moved my family from Pennsylvania down to warm and sunny Florida about 4 years ago. And I would not trade this sun for the snow that we had before. I do not like the cold. I am happy here with the heat and humidity and beautiful weather that we have.
Oh my gosh, you're rubbing it in, Annie. I love Florida. My favorite part is Davenport. My girls and I, we traveled there on vacation. I don't know if you've ever been there, but
No.
Davenport, Florida, Champions Gates is where we go for the resorts, and
Mhm.
we always have a blast. So I know where you are, Annie, and um, I'm in Indianapolis, the suburbs outside of Indiana. And
Okay.
so we have mild temperature. But I know what you're talking about, the snow and everything, because I was born in Rochester, New York, where the snow is. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I'm so happy that you found your home. And so that's
Yes.
what I'm trying to say. I heard you say something so endearing, and you said, your children are your pride and joy.
Yeah.
Wow. How many children do you have?
I have three children, um, girl, boy, girl, and they are 21, 23, and almost 25.
Wow.
So we are entering a new stage of significant others coming into the picture, and we have an engagement right now, and going to be planning a wedding. So it's it's very exciting.
I'm excited for you. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. So three adorable adults now, but they
Yeah.
were once children. And so, how was it being a mother for you? Like your first child, when you
My
first became pregnant, what was your emotions?
I was ecstatic. I was just dying to be a mom. That's what I wanted to do. And my oldest, when she was born, we brought her home and she was so beautiful and so lovely. And a few weeks in, she developed colic.
Oh,
And I didn't sleep for the next 3 months. I I remember nights. My husband was working and going to school for his master's degree, so I was like a single mom, and I remember nights where I was afraid I would fall asleep holding her, but she was crying, and the two of us would just lay on the floor side by side in her room, and she would cry and I would pat her, and that was it. But I think that time bonded us in a
Mhm.
way that is just, I'm not saying better or she's the favorite, but just different.
Yeah.
It was just, we formed a different bond. And now people look at us, I like it when they say we look like sisters.
I know, right?
Um, but she is me. When you look at her, I actually recently had a picture and I looked at it and I really had to try to decipher if it was her or if it was me,
Wow.
because we really look alike, we think alike, we act alike. It's big.
That's a blessing. That is
Yes,
a blessing. Then you have a son.
a son. Yes.
Tell me about him.
He has always been a boy. He did not have colic, but his he spit up all the time. All the time. Every time we feed him, my clothes would just be covered. And then he started crawling, which meant it was all over the floors. And then his favorite foods were orange. So we had
Same.
orange all over the floors. um, but he grew to be a fine, fine young man. And I just love him so much.
Oh, I'm so
Um,
happy to hear.
yeah.
And do you have one more?
One more. The youngest, we were going to stop at two children, but there was this call,
Mm.
and I think it was God coming into my life. And she has been such a special girl. I was a gestational diabetic with her
Oh, wow.
from the very beginning of my pregnancy. So I was doing insulin shots and finger sticks every day.
Wow.
But when she came out, she was just the tiniest little blue-eyed baby that you have ever seen. And my husband and I both have brown eyes, but she had the brightest blue eyes.
Oh, that's so
And
special.
she is just fabulous. I love her trait that she sees people for who they are. They I don't think anybody has a face or a body size or anything, and she sees deeply right into their hearts
Wow.
and loves everybody and is so personable.
I love the innocence of children, and
Yeah.
what you have just described to me with each and every child was that they have their own identities and they
Yes.
came in the world like that. And how important is that? So, we have a question from Victoria saying, what in life prepared you to be a mother?
What in life prepared me? I think I used to love babysitting. And so I would spend time with children. And at that point, children are all different. So I was prepared with all different types of children. Um, and then I think what really spoke to me and got me going is my husband and I had friends who were older than us, and they had twins.
Mm.
And the two of us just loved those babies so much. And after spending time with them, I knew this was really something I wanted to do. And I watched their mother, how she cared for them and how both parents doted on them. And they really provided a very good example for us about parenting and wanting our children and loving our children.
Wow, that's special as well. Now, we're going to delve into this amazing book. The cover design is so unique. If you have your copy, please hold it up. We
I
want you right now to go and purchase this Beneath the Surface. She has this in ebook and paperback as well as hardcover, I believe. And you can go to Amazon, and the link is on the screen right there. You can click that link and you will purchase this book, and guess what? You will not go to sleep until you finish it. I guarantee you, page is going to take you. You see, my pages are bent and everything. Spending time reading page after page, chapter after chapter, to see what I can glean from this book. Now, Annie, what was the most exciting moment about becoming an author?
just doing it. It was a new me. I was recreating myself into someone I hadn't been before. My pre-author days were in music, and I started piano lessons when I was 6 years old,
Mm,
and that was what I did. I played, and then after college, I kind of accidentally fell into church music and directed handbell choirs and vocal choirs. And I had participants in my choirs that were anywhere from 3 years old to their mid 70s who were participating. And when we made the move to Florida, I wasn't finding that opportunity to be in the church and be a director. And writing has been something I have always loved to do. And I've kept journals over and over and over through the years, and different types of journals too. There were times I'd have 2 or 3 journals and I'd have to decide which one I'm going to write in tonight. But I was actually writing fiction. And every time I would start writing, I would be just pulled and called to writing my story. And it was difficult,
mhm,
but I eventually realized this was something I needed to do if I was going to write anything else,
mhm.
because I always get pulled back to it. And so I started, and it started out really kind of like a journal for me and evolved into this book.
Wow. You said you played music and instruments and for choirs and whatnot. Um, when did your passion for music come, and what types of instruments did you play? And to the audience, do you play an instrument? If so, what kind?
Mm. Um, my passion for music came before I can remember, because we had a piano at home and I always went up and just put my fingers on and tinkered around. And I so badly wanted to be able to play something that sounded more like my fingers. And I started lessons. And I remember my first song that I really could play was Yankee Doodle Dandy. And I remember playing it over and over and over and over. And that's what I did. Um, but I also wanted to play the flute. So at the time, the schools where I went to school, in fifth grade, they would start that you could learn to play another instrument.
Mm,
So I started playing flute and then graduated to the piccolo, which is very, very similar, just smaller.
mhm,
Um, and at band, I would always grab other people's instruments and be like, okay, how do I do this?
mhm.
And I'd just play like Mary Had a Little Lamb. But just to be able to get those other instruments into my hands were just so much fun. I loved it. Um, But in college, playing music or being a music major meant that you learn all the instruments because you need to be able to teach all of the instruments.
Wow.
So at that time, I got my hands on everything.
Wow.
And there were times we'd have 2 weeks to learn an instrument and then we would be tested on it. And it was a challenge, but it was fun. It was amazing.
Wow,
So,
that's interesting. I know my daughter Victoria, she hasn't said it, but she plays instruments as well. And I just really would like to know from the audience if you play an instrument, what type of instrument, because instruments give you, it puts you in a place where you can zone out, doesn't
yeah.
it? That's what I
Oh,
was
yeah.
wondering. If playing the music was a healer for you, if it was cathartic for you.
Yes, it was definitely a release, especially as I grew in my ability and was playing pieces of music that
Mm,
had more notes and faster notes and louder notes that I could get in there and bang on that piano and really work out my frustrations.
right, right. So that's something, that's a technique that you gleaned on to protect you and to allow you an outlet,
Yes,
lack of a better.
for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And so I've never played well, I played an instrument, but it was, we had a grand piano at the house
Hmm.
growing up, and we had a B3000, B3000 organ,
Okay.
Hammond, a Hammond. And because my mom was a professional, she played the organ. My sister played the organ, but I never honed in on the craft. It was just for play. You said you taught other people how to.
Yes.
Wow. And
Um,
during that process, what did you find from children? Was it different for them learning how to play rather than adults?
mm, I taught more children than adults, and children are usually more open and accepting. I taught private piano for a bunch of years, and the only struggle there is I loved working with the kids, but it was you need to practice. You can't just come to piano lessons to have fun. I mean, I had M&Ms sitting there, and you play these notes right, you get some M&Ms. You can't come to lessons just for M&Ms. You need to practice too.
You need to practice. That's cool.
But when I first started working with adults, and this would be like with bells, with bell choirs, handbell choirs, they were a little bit nervous about me because I'm fun, I'm quirky, and I have my own little ways of doing things. And I would ask them to do something, to play in a certain way. And some of them would give me a look like, are you crazy? And eventually, they'd get it like, oh yeah, okay, she is on point here. She knows what she's doing. But adults in in some ways are just like kids. They all have their own personalities. They all have their likes and differences, and it's just learning who they are.
Wow.
And yes, it was a choir as a group, but they were still all individuals who I needed to know in order to produce the best sound.
Wow. The imprint that you must have left on their lives um, is probably unmatched, you know?
I hope.
I can, yeah, I can imagine because you taught them something, you gave them a talent that doesn't come easily, you know? And so then they can teach their children, or, it just goes on for generations to generations. Victoria says, I have an acoustic guitar and a kalimba, and I played the piano in high school. Very good. So now we're going to jump from all of the personal stuff to chapter one in this lovely book.
Yes.
Chapter one, A Fresh Start, Spring Evenings and Family Dinners. Wow, that's a huge title.
Yeah.
And I want you to elaborate on what that was for you.
This was my beginning. This, um, a lot of the focus of the book is abuse that I had suffered as a child. And this chapter speaks of m- my husband and I leaving a restaurant with our three very young children, and standing outside was a woman crying out to nobody, but crying out that she needed help because he touched her, and why did he touch her? And she was so distraught, but she very clearly looked homeless
Mhm.
and had all of her belongings in a little cart. And when I walked out, I thought, if I don't do something, that will be me.
When I
Someday
was
that will be.
reading that, it touched me that you could relate to her automatically
Yeah,
because what was in you resonated with what was in her.
absolutely.
And as being human beings, that has not been lost. And that was so amazing to read that because in today's society, you may not expect that, from someone
Yeah.
because for various reasons, might I say. But what I love about you was that you were alert to the needs of a stranger.
Yes.
Where did that come from?
I think, I grew up in church and knew that kindness and compassion would get me through life very far.
Yes.
And I always taught my kids simple things like please, thank you. And when you see someone at the grocery store or on the street or at the mall, you can smile at them, just a smile and a warm hello. And the little acts of kindness make you feel good inside, but you're also making that other person feel warm and cared for as well.
Wow. That amazed me when I read that part. The next thing, dinners. How special was family dinners?
We made a choice early on that our children would sit at the dinner table with us, TV off, and now we say no cell phones. um, it's just the family. So when our oldest was in her high chair, she would sit at the table with us. We would say a prayer with her before we ate, and she was with us the whole time we were at the table. And when our second came along, he was in the high chair and our oldest was in the booster chair. And we just kept adding. And the rules were we're at the table, no TV, we sit and we talk. And I don't think I realized when we started that what kind of impact it would have on life down the road. And now that we have adult children, we sit down to have family dinners. And when we're done eating, nobody gets up and runs away from the table. Everybody likes to stay and talk and listen and joke. We get silly, and it's a good time. And it was something that we started when they were little, but we didn't realize how far reaching it would be until now when they are adults and enjoying it on their own. We don't have to tie them down to get them to stay at the dinner table.
Wow. But that was not your lot when you were growing up.
Um, Not really. We would sit at the dinner table. I I am not much of a meat and potatoes girl, and in fact, potatoes. I don't like potatoes.
Really?
No, mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, I always volunteer to give my serving of mashed potatoes away.
Goodness, my daughter would love you.
Uh, well, and we would sit there. There wouldn't be much discussion. I always felt like the outsider, and I was not included in what was happening. And I would kind of force feed myself a little bit, and because it was what's in front of you is what you're eating, and that is it. Um, which shaped what we did with our own children. And we always said, if you're not going to eat what we prepared, there's peanut butter and jelly, or leftovers from the night before, or something like that. So our children were never pushed in a direction of, you must eat this and that is it.
So, what I hear you saying is that you learned lessons from your childhood and you
Yes.
implemented them with your children. And I found that so brilliant, you know, because many people, you could walk away from your upbringing and you can say, I had a horrible upbringing, um, and you could keep the pattern going, right?
Yeah.
Or you can do something about it. And so that's what you did with me reading this book. I'm like, wow. So we got to talk about how you um, change the dynamics of your family.
I,
You allowed them in the decision making
yeah,
to choose what they wanted to do, how the evening was going to go, what games they were going to play, instead of saying, tonight we're having game night and we're playing X, Y, and Z.
yeah.
Tell me how you came up with that.
I learned probably in my late teens, early 20s, that everybody can teach you something. That doesn't mean they have to be doing something good.
Mhm.
You can learn from other people's mistakes and other people's bad habits. So I took what I had growing up and said, I don't want this for my children. I never heard, I love you. I'm proud of you. You did a good job. And it says in the book, when I got pregnant for the first time, I immediately started talking to that baby. And I
Yes.
knew she couldn't hear me yet, but I immediately started talking to her and telling her how much I loved her. And we just continued. And it's about giving them choices. If we wouldn't give them choices, they'd be miserable, we would be miserable, but we would rather see smiles on their faces than have them pouting somewhere.
Now,
So,
wow. So there's two questions that I need to get to. All right. One says, it sounds like, well, this is a statement. And there's another question. It sounds like you and your husband were intentional in letting your children know they had a voice. How important was it to you? And tell me what that equated to. What what happened in your life that made you come up with this decision?
I was one of 6 children, and I don't think we were individuals.
Mm,
We were just a pack,
mm.
and there weren't choices and there weren't options for us. So, from the time our kids were little, we made sure that they had their choices and they had options, and that allowed them to grow into individuals.
I love it.
We didn't force them to play a certain sport
Mhm.
or play a certain instrument. It was all about what they wanted to do. And we ended up with a dancer and
Mm,
a firefighter, and our youngest is in the culinary world. So they are 3 very different kids with varied interests, yet they can come together as one and be siblings.
I love it. I love it because you gave them a chance in life. There was a parent that said, um, I raised my children and now I pay for their therapy. So she's saying, she wasn't the perfect parent and now she feels guilty. So she's paying for them to get the therapy they need. And that's very funny, but it's not funny on the opposite end because when children are damaged in a household, it's not a pretty picture. And so throughout this book, you haven't read this book, but you need to get it beneath the surface. It's talking about intricate details of what transpired in an innocent girl's life. She's before you now, and she's smiling and she's laughing and having dialogue and conversation, but she was once a little girl who was taken advantage of. And she's going to tell you a little bit about that situation, who it was, and well, not who it was, but going to tell you because many people in the audience, this is not brand new to you. We've done other shows as well about people that have gone through the same situation. And I have a sister. And so it hits home. We want to talk about these hard, difficult topics because we want the audience to know you are not alone and that there is help. And so this is the face of someone that is willing to tell her story. Can you please tell us what happened and what age it was at?
um, I said I was one of 6 children. I was the only girl. And starting at a very young age, I was sexually abused by one of my brothers. And probably 20 years ago, it was very hard to get those words out of my mouth.
I can imagine.
I did not tell anyone. I was afraid. I felt like I was alone and I didn't know how to handle it because my day-to-day experiences weren't good to begin with, and then added this on top. It was very hard for me to trust people, and even now, it's hard for me to trust and hard for me to open up. So, some of those scars are still there. I've come a long way in healing, but they're still there. I did not tell anybody until my husband and I were married for about 5 years. And I knew I had to tell him. And I could trust him. I felt I could trust him. We had known each other since we were 12. So obviously, we didn't start dating then, but we had known each other for a very long time. And all of a sudden, I realized I had two beautiful little girls, and there was no way I could let them near him, around him. I would not allow them to go through what I went through. And it would have just killed me if I would have put them in that situation and something would have happened. Because all those feelings that I had all those years, I didn't want them to feel that. I wanted them to be innocent. And we made a very difficult choice to cut off contact with my family because the brother who did this to me was always the winner. He was the one everybody always championed. And it didn't matter if he was doing something bad, doing something good, he could skate through life without a problem. And I just knew that if I would go to somebody in my family and say, this happened, he did this to me, I probably wouldn't be believed. And if I would be believed, no one would take care of my healing and help me journey through that process. But I trusted my husband enough, and he was the first person I told.
I am so happy you had someone to go to. Many people feel like they don't have anyone to go to. And then another thing, um, you went to therapy, and your therapist, you said like five therapists, and they all had the same senses not to tell your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And for the simple reason that um, no one would have protected you out of the whole scenario, which
Yeah.
the child is the most important. And then when you said you were the only girl, and I'm reading this book and it says you're the only girl, I could not imagine why no one would surround you and just love on you and just make you the center of attention.
Outside people always came and said, oh, you're the only girl, you must be spoiled. And I learned to go
Mm.
and put a little smile on my face and know, well, if you knew the truth. But I heard that so often, and then my parents would be all proud, but act proud. But as soon as that person would walk away, it would be right back to the same old, same old. Um, I did have a therapist tell me that it is very, very common if there's a large family and a single girl and the rest boys, or maybe just two girls and the rest boys, that that kind of abuse is very common.
Really? Wow.
Yes, which
I didn't have, I had no idea until I read this story. Um, she says, I cannot fathom, and that was my sentiments exactly. I cannot fathom the amount of blind loyalty there is in family for abusers of any kind. Thank you for putting your children first and stopping the cycle before a new victim was born or
mhm.
birthed. That's my sentiments exactly. If you are enjoying this program, we want you to do us a huge favor and share because someone needs to hear this story of beneath the surface. Beneath the surface. She's telling a story, and the back of the book says she's taking you behind the scenes of what looks like the perfect family. Have you ever seen a perfect family on the outside? She says, challenging the belief that appearances fully reveal the truth. Annie Lynn's story tells her honesty The honesty that is told between these pages is breathtaking. So, if you love an action story, this is the story for you because there is not a boring, not a boring line, a boring paragraph, or a
Mhm.
boring chapter. All right. Wow. And so she says also, I know that wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy thing to share. I know someone is getting healing through your transparency. Thank you so much for your being brave to tell your story, Annie. How does that make you feel?
I hope I can help someone, even if it's a single girl out there who's scared and afraid, just like I was, to be able to open up. I think maybe because I kept it deep down inside me for so long, it made it more difficult to process once I brought it out.
Mm,
When after I told my husband, I think I was about 27.
mm,
So I kept it that long and I told him and the floodgates opened. I think I cried for the next 2 years. I fell into a very deep depression. And so there I was, a mom with 3 young kids that I had home with me, trying to hide my tears every day, and then huddling up in bed, crying all night. I had sleep issues before because he used to come into my room at night and I was scared. And I still have sleep issues. I have a very regimented evening
I
to,
was reading that, Annie. I can't believe it, even to this day.
yeah.
Told about an experience when you were falling asleep. I guess it was on the sofa or something, and you woke up and your clothes were off, your
Mhm.
skirt was up, and you knew he had taken advantage of you.
Yeah.
How many of you out there have had similar experiences and you didn't know what to do as a little child? What
No.
do you do when you don't know what to do? When you can't tell your parents, you can't tell your siblings, you can't tell anybody. You have to hold that deep, dark secret until after you're married with children. That part right there is what got me. Now, after you were married, yes. But now you have children. And I think when you, after you had the children, it's when the fear began to, how am I going to protect my babies? I can no longer do it on my own. I need someone else on this, with me. I need four eyes. My two
Yeah.
eyes will not be enough. Is that how you felt?
Yes, definitely. Um, my husband, I felt he needed to know. So if I moved my girls away in certain situations or whatever, if we were in that group, somebody else needed to be watching to make sure he didn't pull them onto his lap, or, you know, oh, they're little, they need to potty. Well, oh, I'll help them go
Yeah,
potty. These were my fears.
yes.
And I didn't want that. And I, in the same respect, didn't want my husband to think I was making irrational choices and decisions. I felt like he needed to know so he could protect them as much as I could.
I love that. I love it. I'm so glad that that day came. Holding secrets decays the inside of the person, you know. Holding secrets is heavy weight. And so I'm glad you got the weight off. But once you got the weight off of you, you went into a deep, deep, dark depression. Um, how did you get out of it?
Therapy, lots and lots of therapy. Um, there were times I'd spend 3 days a week in my therapist's office sitting there crying. And she talked me through. Um, there was some medication involved because the damage was so deep that we needed something to help me along.
Yes.
And then she realized that me seeing her 3 times a week just wasn't enough. So I went to an outpatient program,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in therapy 5 or 6 days a week for maybe 5 hours a day. And there was a whole group of us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that, I think, brought me up so much. And I realized that my life had value.
Come on. I love to see your smile when you said that.
I could make my own decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and I shouldn't feel guilty for the way I feel. And it's okay to protect my children. And um, in that program, they usually did like bring your spouse in and do a one-on-one with the counselor. And they realized that they didn't need to do that with my husband. They needed to bring my parents in. And so my parents came in just for a session, and the therapist was blown away at their blindness to everything. And that was when it was confirmed that if I would tell my parents or any of my family that I would not be supported, that I needed to learn to grow and be my own person.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to my regular therapist again after I went through the outpatient program. And I spent 20 years in her office until I moved to Florida. And she was right there. I hope she's watching now. Um, I did let her know that the book was out, and I said she probably could have written most of it herself. But I spent 20 years in therapy, um, learning, growing, knowing that I could be my own woman, make my own choices. And here I am. I'm an author now. That's it still just makes me a little crazy sometimes. I can't believe it.
Yes. Yes. Because everybody has a story.
Yeah.
You know, we
Mhm.
came into this world. Oh, she says, "Speak, Annie." Oh, I love.
Mhm.
We came into this world for purpose and for reason, right? And we have to have a little bit of pain. We have to have a little bit of sunshine. You know, we're up sometimes and we're down sometimes. We cannot be all peachy keen 24 hours a day. Why? Because God puts us on an even playing field so we could all do what our assignment is on earth. And Annie, for lack of a better word, I want you to know that you're living out your assignment.
Mhm. Thank
So
you.
painful may it be, right?
Yes.
Your assignment was to spread the word that you can be mishandled. You can be misused. You can be abused. You can be treated like you're invisible because that's what I was reading. That's what my mind, because I'm a creative. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's like she was invisible. She was like a painting on the wall that nobody ever paid attention to. Yet
Mhm.
she had feeling and substance and desires and wants, and you long to be loved. And that's another thing that got me. I long to be loved. I long to be appreciated. I long to be seen. I long to be heard. Yet, what is the term your mom often said when you told on people?
I was a tattler, a tattler. I was always the tattler. But if somebody else did something to me, they were not reprimanded. It was fine if somebody did something to me, but if I went and told and said that person did it, no, don't be a toddler. Go back outside or go back and play. There was never a defense
Never a defense.
for
And
me.
how did you feel when there's never a defense for you?
It's painful,
Mhm.
painful.
I can't imagine the amount of strength you found within yourself. This is awesome transformation to hear, Annie.
Yes.
She said, I'm an author now. Yes, Annie, that sounds like such a gigantic milestone. Yes, you did it, Annie. You found your way through a maze, and now you are here. How does it feel to be here?
It's amazing. Um, this book, when I first wrote it, I didn't think I would publish it,
Mm,
but it was so cathartic for me to write it. It was very difficult at times, but also so cathartic that by the time I got to the end and I was finished writing and editing and all of that, I realized I needed to publish it. I
yeah.
needed my voice out there, and I needed this said for me and hopefully for others who can heal in the same way.
Well, Annie, there are so many reviews about this book. One of them says it is breathtaking, captivating, and heartwarming. Uh, it has complexities in it.
Mhm.
The family dynamics is crazy, um, but they appreciate your honesty and your vivid descriptions that you painted. Oh my gosh. There's another one that says, I was in tears after the first 30 minutes. What a sad story. I can't imagine the hurt this little girl must have felt, being the only girl with four older brothers. Oh my goodness. Any time has elapsed, like I told you it would. Let's skip through because we have several questions. Chapter 3 on page 38. You described how you included your children in picking their activities instead of choosing them. How did that work for your family? Where did you learn how to give each child a voice?
I think giving them a voice just came very naturally. Um, I remember there were things that I was forced into as a child that I didn't want to do, and I wanted my kids to make their own decisions.
That's very
And that meant there were some cold Saturday mornings on a soccer field until they realized, nope, we don't want to do it either. But they made their choices. And let
very
them do what they wanted to do so they could be their own person.
exactly. You have shown them how to be independent. You know, when you give a child a voice, you're showing them how to be independent. There are
Yes.
5 key insights that ensure memorable family experiences that you wrote in your book. Embrace collaborative planning. And I love that. Like, parents can take the pressure off of planning everything if they will collaborate with the whole entire family. And
Yeah.
that's what you came up with. I'm like, that's brilliant. Um, value each member's experience. Will you touch on that?
Like I said before, growing up, we were like a pack. Even as adults, we were all given the same Christmas gifts.
Hmm.
And we were never, and sometimes my kids get the same gifts, but they apply. But even as adults, there was one year that we all got a baking pan and a cookbook,
Hmm.
except my body had started not tolerating gluten. So being given that Christmas gift of a cookbook that I couldn't use, it was frustrating. And I think that helped us to learn that we can't just do everything the same for our kids. They're different kids. They're very different.
Wow.
And we needed to treat them like that, not as one, but as three individuals.
All right, audience, it's time for your questions. It's time for you to send questions. But Annie is going to read chapter 8 because that's her favorite chapter. She wants to share something with you about this profound book and enlighten you just a little bit about why you need to hurry up right now and purchase it. You need this in your archives. Take it away.
I'm not going to read the chapter.
No.
But I'm going to explain to you what this chapter is all about. It is entitled Reinventing Holiday Celebrations with Laughter and Screams. And what this is about, I always wanted to give my children something to look forward to, something to give them hope for the future, and just fun in our family. So I actually have a calendar here, and every month we celebrated something. We started with, I'll start with December, because there's a lot that happens in December. We celebrate Christmas, and during that time, we would watch as many holiday movies as we could. In our area, there was a drive-through lights display. So we would have a special dinner and take some hot chocolate and some cookies, and we would go through the lights display together. I have a friend from high school, and we started making gingerbread houses from kits, not from scratch, when we were in college. And when I had my oldest daughter, when she was a year and a half old, she made her first gingerbread house with my friend, her and I together. And again, that was something that we let the kids create. We didn't say, oh, no, it has to be decorated this way. No, they got to create their own. So as each child came along, we had the gingerbread house building every year. And then my friend got married and had her own children. And they are still in Pennsylvania. But my kids, all in their 20s, look forward to gingerbread house building every year. And wherever they are, we all do a Zoom call together, and we still build gingerbread houses with her and her kids now. Jump ahead of that, the rule for gingerbread houses is you have to wait till January 1st. And on January 1st, everybody gets 10 minutes on the microwave, and you can eat as much as you want. But after 10 minutes, they go in the trash. So kids always loved that, but everything was stale on the gingerbread houses. I wouldn't want to eat it, but that was one of our traditions. Then we had Christmas Eve. Yeah, I said it twice. Mm-hmm. I was a church worker, so on Christmas Eve, my day was busy. So on Christmas Eve, we would prepare for Christmas Day. And that would be making cinnamon rolls for Christmas morning and making a lasagna to take to the church on Christmas Eve because I barely had time to eat. And the kids would bake a birthday cake for baby Jesus. And usually they would do these things with my husband. And I had some peace and quiet to sit by the fireplace and enjoy the lights on the tree. And it was just something that was built in. And then we had Christmas Eve. And my kids grew up, we took their jammies, family matching jammies, another tradition, to the church. And my husband would leave and take them home, put them in their jammies, and then leave and take them home and put them to bed on Christmas Eve because I would get home late. Um, and then on Christmas Day, we had Christmas dinner, of course, and all the opening of gifts. Those are things that other people might do. One of our different things we did is when it would snow, everybody would go to the grocery store and buy bread, eggs, and milk.
I love it.
I don't know what you're going to do with that, but we would get hot dogs and the making of s'mores. We would build a tent in our family room and roast hot dogs over the fireplace and eat in the tent. And then when everybody was done, we would roast our marshmallows and make our s'mores. And when we moved to Florida, all of a sudden we don't have a fireplace and we don't have snowstorms. So now it's hurricanes. When there's a hurricane, we have our hot dogs and we make some s'mores too. So we have these traditions every month of the year, just going all the way through. And it's things the kids look forward to now, even as adults, and they're including their significant others with it too. So it's just a beautiful time.
You have brilliantly taken your lemons and made the best lemonade anyone could ever imagine. I want to tell you thank you. Thank you for your strength and your courage. Thank you for your story. You know, some stories we think are bad stories, but God seems to turn them around to make them worth it, right?
Yes,
And so
indeed.
He's given you the ability to now share your story with the world, to give people hope, to let them know they're not alone. And you have given them a shoulder to lean on.
Yeah.
So, as we know, there are many people out there that's going through similar situations that you have gone through. And so, right now, we would like for you to say a prayer for them, prayer comfort, to let them know that you have them on your mind.
Okay. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day and for all the blessings we've been given. We pray especially for those who have faced traumas and abuse in so many ways. Please bring them peace and safety as they work towards healing. God, look over all your children as we praise and glorify your name. And all God's people say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for such a great show. The audience is chiming in with many questions. You can go on afterwards and watch the comments. You have helped somebody today, and that's what ministry is all about. So we just want to tell you thank you. And will you mind giving them a way to contact you via your website? We're going to put it on. They said lovely prayer.
Mm,
Amen. We're going to
thank
put
you,
your
Joy.
website on here. We still have many questions to ask. And while she was talking, I just flashed the titles of each chapter so you'll know um, what they're about. But you need to go right now and get this book because it's going to brighten your day. It's going to enlighten you. It's going to help heal you from your pain, your trauma, your sorrow, and your grief. And you will then be able to get the last chapter, ironically, is healing. You will be able to get the healing that you need through reading someone else's story. We see several people on here, and they came not by happenstance because they wanted to hear Who is this lady? How did she do it? How did she make it through? I'm going to flash some quotes on the screen as we say good night. I want the audience to just type good night and say thank you to Annie for sharing her story. Can you do that for me? Tell her thank you. The quote says, "Hugs can do great amount of good, especially for children." That's from Princess Diana.
Hmm.
And when I saw that, I was like, wow, she's
No.
able to capture that moment and to give us and leave us a bit of wisdom. Hug your children tonight. Parents, hug your children. Children, hug your parents. It's all right. Children are not things to be molded, but are people to be
Mm,
unfolded. When I was reading your story, that's what I was thinking.
yeah.
Like, wow. And I want to also tell you, thank you, Annie, because throughout this book, you share how what a pleasure it was for you being a mother, for
Yes.
you being the mother of the three children that God chose you to be the mother to. And how often do you get, you said your parents never said the words, I love you.
Mm-mm.
And I'm from a house where my parents told me all the time.
Mm.
You see the you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are people out there right now that have not had the love and they don't know what the love is. But now you've turned it. You stopped a generational curse
Yeah.
just by you changing up. And throughout this book, you all, she doesn't specifically say this happened to me, so now I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, but it's throughout the book, and you will see it as you read it. If she had a bad experience, she turned it, and that's the lessons we want each of you all to have tonight. Here is the book one more time. Here's her website, and her website is beautiful. Go ahead, click the link and you will be able to see AnnieLynnWrites.com. Oh, so many people are on. Good night. Thank you, Annie. So inspiring, they said. Good night. Thank you. Oh, Cynthia Shaw. She's from all the way down in North Carolina.
Oh,
She's on tonight. All right. Tell us where you're from and tell Annie thank you. All right. Thank you, Annie. You've been great. And all of the information you need will be on the screen. Go ahead and, if you would please, leave a donation. If you've enjoyed the show, we would like for you to leave a donation to let us know that you appreciate us bringing you good content. All right. If you would please sow a small seed, you will reap a great harvest. The Cash App is $ journey into purpose. On this show, we help people journey into their purposes by allowing other people to come on and share their story. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. Oh, wow. They're saying, wow, this is awesome. And we want to mention your publicist, Annie.
absolutely.
We want to mention the one and only,
Absolutely. I
right?
I was hoping there was a way to get that in yet.
Yes.
G Morgan Publishing, GEE Morgan Publishing. They have been fantastic up, down, all the way around. And if you think you want to write to, oh, just get in touch with them. And they have walked me through everything. From the beginning, I said, this is my first time. I need help. And they have been absolutely fabulous.
Wow.
So,
Yes, they are ghost writers as well. If you have a story and you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, I highly recommend G. Morgan Publishing. She has done work for me as well. And I would venture to say she's one of the best out there. And I highly recommend her. She comes
yes.
and she loves her work
Mhm.
and she makes sure that it is. as best as it can possibly be, right? I'm safe to say that, right?
She's fantastic.
So please, if you can, put your phone number on the screen in the comment section so we can have you, we can highlight you, Felicity, if you will do that. If you would like to have an interview just like Annie Lynn, it's on the screen for you. Click the link and we will be happy to read your story and to highlight you on Sandra's Authors Forum. All right. It's been a plum pleasing pleasure. There you go. To come before you tonight. And I will end by saying, I am ecstatic to be alive. And I pray to God you are as well. Good night until next Thursday. Until we see you again, I want you to know we appreciate you here at Sandra's Authors Forum. Good night. Amen. Good night.